Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is the project update for the Airship project. And thank you all for being here. We're going to tell you a little bit about our project, what we've done over the last 6 months, and what we plan to do coming up. So first, just a brief overview of what Airship is. Airship is a collection of loosely coupled components that they basically take a collection of YAML files in one or more Git repositories, chew them up a little bit, select the right ones, and then use them to stand up an entire cloud infrastructure site. And that work, the thing that you are running on that infrastructure can be anything you want, as long as it is deployable via Helm charts. Typically, and especially beginning with, we are using OpenStack as our primary use case, but we already support other use cases and plan to support more in the future. Airship takes YAML files, like I mentioned, and those YAML files represent things like security policies and network specifications, bare metal node specifications, and the definitions and overrides for Helm charts to select them, put the right container images into them, and then deploy them with all of the custom configuration that you need for your particular use case. And another important piece of this is that Airship supplies a front door through the shipyard component that is used for initial deployment, but it also uses that same front door for ongoing updates. Because deployment is really the easy part, and part of why we wanted to build Airship in the first place is to make sure that the ability to continually upgrade in a predictable, reliable, resilient way is really the end goal. That's the prime use case. Deployment is only something you do once at the beginning. So where we've come from, the foundation for Airship and sort of the design philosophy for it was laid in 2016 with the OpenStack Helm project, which that project took the OpenStack components, containerized, and then it deployed them via Helm charts and lifecycle managed them via Helm charts. And we learned a lot from that endeavor, how to do some very challenging things and manage a lot of Helm charts, for complex deployments. And what grew out of that was it became clear we needed Airship to be able not only to manage all of those Helm charts in a reasonable way and lifecycle manage them. You don't want to be using the Helm command line for everything, but also so that you could manage your infrastructure, your Kubernetes infrastructure, your bare metal infrastructure the same way. So we incubated these projects in GitHub, and then about a year ago, we became a pilot project at the Vancouver Summit, and that's where we are today. We are a pilot project in the OpenStack Foundation. However, as you saw in the keynote, we've also announced our 1.0 release. That's a big release for us. That signifies that we are enterprise ready and general availability for enterprise use. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. What we've been working on and focusing on in the last 6 months has been security, hardening, operations, and really the ability to rely on this stuff in production, as opposed to adding a lot of new features. So some examples of that include, from a security enhancement perspective, we've been incorporating the latest security enhancements that Kubernetes has added, things like etcd encryption. We've been adopting best practices for permissions and admission controllers and things like that that go into a strong and bulletproof Kubernetes distribution. And then encryption end-to-end of those YAML manifests when appropriate, because oftentimes you'll have secrets in them, passwords and keys, things like that. And so it's important that they be encrypted at rest in Git, that they are encrypted over the wire on the way to the cluster, and then again encrypted at rest within the cluster. We've worked on a lot of platform deployment and tooling enhancements. The peg leg component, which is the primary Airship component that lives outside the cluster itself and kind of shuffles the YAML manifests around from Git to the cluster and does validation and does layering and things like that. That tool has really come into its own in the last 6 months and has increased its usefulness in sort of a CI/CD context. We've made a lot of enhancements to Armada for, born out of experience with deploying complex collections of Helm charts that each have their own kind of characteristics for what kinds of Kubernetes objects do you need to wait for when you're deploying them, and what do you do when you test them, and fine-grained timeout specification. So a lot has been done in Armada there. And then we've done our initial first steps toward multi-OS support. We have folks who have been focusing on OpenSUSE support first and have done a lot of great work there. And we will be continuing that work in the near future. That's going to be one of our big topics at the upcoming PTG. And finally, resiliency. Kubernetes, one of the benefits, one of the reasons we moved to Kubernetes is that it supports the ability to have rich liveness probes and readiness probes to keep track of your applications and to restart them if they're sick. So it's really important that you have very rock-solid probes so that you have a good read on what is sick. Because if something's sick and you don't know it, well, then you're not restarting it. And if something's not sick and you think it's sick, well, then you might be restarting critical services when they shouldn't be restarted. And then finally, we've added resiliency for MAS bare metal deployment. That was something that required some significant Helm-oriented and otherwise sort of network configuration and things like that, because MAS does not natively want to run in a containerized context very easily without some hand-holding. So that's what got us to 1.0. Now that we're at 1.0, we do want to start adding some more features. First and foremost, are you going to take this slide?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, please, take this one. I kept going. I'm so excited.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, it's worth talking about what we'd like to do now going forward. So, again, we're always sort of keeping our eye on where things are crystallizing out in the upstream community and tools that we should bring in and new paths that we should leverage. And one thing that was really important for us is we really wanted to do ironic integration into Airship. And so rather than go down a path of directly integrating that into dry dock in the same way that we did for MAS, we took a look at what was going on, and obviously the cluster API is really sort of coming into its own. And so we're really looking at participating in the Metal Kubes project and pulling in ironic in that way. And that sort of also pulls in kubeadm integration, which is another thing we've had our eye on, basically because that's in some ways how the cluster API would like you to lifecycle your environments. And those two things sort of go hand in hand, and it will be the mechanism that we use to start supporting ironic. There's work going on right now to sort of ensure that we can support containerized network functions. So this means ensuring that we support things like Multis and making sure that we support multi-tenancy. So in other words, not just delivering these Kubernetes environments to be able to run one tenant on top of them like an OpenStack environment, but also ensure that we can have true Kubernetes tenants come in and leverage these environments. Another big transition that we're looking to make that we think will really make the product easier to use and allow you to really sort of bring your own organizational requirements is leveraging a native workflow management engine, something like Argo or Tecton. We've really got our eye on Argo, and we've already had a presentation about this earlier this week. This will do a lot of things for us. It'll hopefully allow us to have a much thinner Airship deployment because these workflow management engines can scale the components of Airship that are necessary to make a change, and then go ahead and actually destroy them at the end of the workflow process. And we don't need those Airship components running continually in the environments. We also think, again, like when we have these really complex from release to release upgrades, it'll be a mechanism for us to be able to declaratively encode those things rather than circumventing the declarative system in order to accomplish those difficult upgrades. Another big thing that's occurring is obviously Helm v3 is again coming into its own, and we're also evaluating, looking at making or adopting Armada more in an operator-like context. So today it has an API or it can run in CLI mode. An Armada operator would function more like a traditional Kubernetes operator. trying to fulfill those helm chart installations and upgrades. We're also looking at ensuring Cloud Harbor, which is, for those who are unaware of what this is, it's sort of an airship, regional airship, managing a whole bunch of other airships, and we're trying to make this a first-class citizen, so this is something that's out there that can be used by everyone. Service layers is a concept that we really like to introduce that would make doing things like more granular OpenStack
Networking.
more granular OpenStack sort of configuration. So a typical example would be, instead of saying I would like to incorporate, let's say, Keystone into my Airship deployment, I might be able to more pick and choose at more granular service layers, like I want to incorporate Keystone that supports LDAP.
And then also the ability to sort of pick and choose what your workload is and compose, some OpenStack, some LMA or not, some CI/CD or not.
These sort of ready-to-go bundles that you can sort of pick and choose from in order to compose an airship, or use none of them if you want to generate your own, but more of these available in the community. Edge use cases, this really ties in what we're saying about starting to leverage a new cloud-native workflow management engine. It means that we can start supporting some of those edge use cases where people want to start deploying these environments on one node, two node, because we will be able to vastly reduce the resource requirements of Airship by effectively making its own control plane much more ephemeral than it is right now. And then finally, YAML management improvements. It's always on the list. It's the primary interface to Airship, just making that more consumable and more easy to understand and more easy to onboard.
I was so excited about all those new features, I almost didn't let Alan talk about them. Another thing that we've been very busy with over the last 6 months has been increasing our community-oriented CI/CD. We've done that along a couple different metrics. We have begun pushing results for our third-party gates that we already had so that they can be visible through Garrett, and we have a little more ways to go there, but we're off to a good start. We've added more lightweight gates using something called Airship, which we have a talk about later today, if you're interested in that, for a development environment in CI/CD. We've added bandit scanning for our commits. We've also added a new type for our deployments that can be used to sort of get you a lab set up much faster, because it leaves out some of the complex configuration. And we call that the sloop type. And that, it's named after a type of ship. And that gets you off the ground faster. It's not production ready, but it helps you get something stood up, which was some feedback that we had gotten from in the community. It's more important sometimes to just get something stood up so you can play with it, show it off, and then worry about how to kind of integrate the security features and such resiliency that you need for a full-fledged site. We've expanded our developer documentation, we've expanded our operational documentation, our troubleshooting guides, and again, our reference manifest. We've probably doubled our reference YAML manifest for different use cases for people to start with for their own sites. We've also been focused on building the community, and we're really happy that you're all here. We've increased the diversity of our core team to 3 different employers. We have had contributions from a great many different operators and vendors and others, independent folks. So we really appreciate all of your contributions to the project. And we are moving toward being a top-level project for the OSF, and that is what we're striving for, implementing the 4 opens. And we have weekly design calls and IRC meetings for the developers, and you're more than welcome to join those to participate. We also have the PTG coming up on Friday and Saturday, and you're very welcome there as well.
And I'd also add, anyone who's interested in those upcoming things that we're talking about, a lot of those are being discussed right now on those design calls, and in terms of how they'll look and how we'll implement them and stuff like that. So it's a great place to come.
That's right. Here you see just a few quotes from various organizations that are using Airship or have committed to using Airship for their their products or their use cases, business use cases, and I won't read them. These slides will be available, or you can take a picture. But clearly there's a lot of interest and support for Airship, which is really great to see. And this is obviously just a subset. These are the ones that we got quotes from.
There are thousands more.
There are thousands, millions even. And then finally, high on our list is to create a formal governance structure, which is out in patch set form today. The patch set that we have has been based on both OpenStack governance, best practices, and some of the best practices or some of the governance model that was developed by our sister pilot projects, some of which have graduated now. So clearly they're doing something right. And we welcome feedback on that governance structure. We don't want to rush it. We want to get it right for everybody to make sure that we have something that supports a thriving community.
Do we say there's a patch set?
There's a patch set.
There's a patch set. There's a patch set out for the Airship governance. It's currently soaking in the community right now, or it might be that we just are busy at the summit and haven't got back to taking all the comments into account. I encourage you all to go look at it, make comments there.
All right, so like I mentioned, we have a couple more Airship talks today. You are welcome to come to those as well. And here you see our IRC, our website, our wiki, our website again, because we really want you to go to it, our mailing list, and we have 3.5 minutes for questions. Yes, sir. Thank you. In the marketplace yesterday, I showed a slide that detailed step number 2 in the deployment process, and I invited you to come to another talk that would explain talk number 1 and step number 1 and 3. That is in that project onboarding meeting at 3:20, so that's how I get people to come to my talks. Other questions? Yes? Good question. No, the question was, is Airskiff replacing Airship in a bottle? In a nutshell, no, they do different things and they have different use cases. However, it was added because Airship in a bottle isn't good at everything. But again, if you'd like to learn more about that, we actually have an Airskiff talk at 4:30 today. So you're welcome to come to that. Good questions. I didn't plant these. Any other questions? Yes?
Well, when you say flexible CI/CD, I mean, and what do you mean by that? Well, yeah. So I mean, so we have examples of third-party gates today. I mean, on the treasure map repo right now. So those manifests in there. We sort of encourage people to say, look, if you're going to try to start out building a production environment, this is really a great place where here's a series of Airship YAMLs. They have been validated. And when we say validated, we mean literally there's a third-party gate there that actually takes those, deploys those on actual bare metal nodes, and says, yes, everything about those is working perfectly. So really, you can just sort of take those and modify them for your own bare metal environment. So we have examples already of third-party gates sort of helping out some of the CI/CD.
In addition, the CI/CD interface, if you will, to Airship is pretty thin because Airship is a deployment, it's supposed to be like a push-button deployment technology, right? So you don't have to do a lot of rework to kick that process off if you're doing it in a one CI/CD system versus another.
But there are also things that happen inside of an Airship deployment that can facilitate a CI/CD system. For instance, our model will do things like run Helm test to ensure that, okay, so you installed those Helm charts. Are they actually up to the developer's expectations of those services now running? And you can get all of those sort of things for free, having Airship running in a CI/CD environment because you're sort of getting that feedback automatically because it's something that it does.
We're about out of time, but may have time for one more quick question. We also have stickers up here, so if you'd like an Airship sticker, please grab one on your way out. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate your time.